Welcome back to the Open World RPG in Dream series, day 36 to 38. In this devlog, I'll be creating the quest list UI, as well as the console, which is where the player can access the quest list UI. I start day 36 off with creating the programmer art console sculpt. The entire purpose of the console will be a place the player can go to access information. For example, quest progress, skill info, settings, the world map, etc. The reason I'm hiding all these things behind a menu that can only be accessed from certain locations is simply because of thermo. Ideally, it would be accessible from anywhere, but that would severely limit the amount of thermo I have to work with in the main game. Instead, I trigger a doorway when the player interacts with the console, and they are brought to a separate scene where all this info can be displayed. It's kind of like fantasy.
It should be a lectern.
Fantasy tech kind of stuff.
Wait, no. No.
This is my game. Once that was finished, it was time to create the actual scene that the player gets sent to. I create the new scene, then I take any logic from the player that might be useful for the console. I end up taking part of the inventory, the control logic, and the variables. I decided to make the interface navigation similar to the inventory and crafting menu. And by that I mean you'll be using the D-pad to move a cursor around to select things. In the future, I would love to add cursor support, but D-pad navigation is what I'm going to be using for the time being. So as I mentioned before, the console needs to display a bunch of different things. The quest list is just one of those. To be able to swap between these different things, I decided to sort them into tabs, similar to how the Breath of the Wild menu is set up. The way I set the tabs up is kind of weird though, to be honest. Instead of binding the tab changing to buttons, I made it so you have to move your cursor there and then press X. I'll definitely be changing this so that L1 goes to the left tab, to the tab to the left, and R1 goes to identical to how the last RPG was. Okay, this is exactly what I wanted. So when we're hovering over quests, it highlights, but pressing X doesn't do anything. When we hover over settings and press X, it changes. This is exactly the functionality I wanted. The last thing I did on day 36 was make it so you can enter and exit the console. The functionality is identical to how it was implemented in the enchantment table, so it was pretty easy to rebuild. Basically, it remembers whichever doorway you came from, and when exiting, it sends you out that same doorway. Let's test it. Use console. We're in the console. We can move the menu, and let's press touchpad. And it did not. Okay, it didn't work. Oh, I remember why it didn't work. We have to name the controller sensor. We'll be working on this Thursday, and hopefully we get it done, but we definitely won't. I was actually correct this time. It took 2 more days. So to start day 37 off, I replaced the settings tab with a skills tab and a world map tab. I decided the settings should be accessible from anywhere, so it doesn't belong in the console. And here's what the tabs actually ended up looking like. I think they came out pretty well. After making the tabs, we were finally able to start working on the actual quest list. First, I needed to figure out what the layout was going to look like. I decided to have the list of quests on the left, the quest info on the right, and the filters above the quest list. Then I started working on the filter checkboxes. To select the filters, you move the cursor over them and press X, similar to everything else. I added 3 different filters: filter by completed, incomplete, and in progress. Later, I realized that didn't really make any sense, so I changed it to completed, not started, and in progress. Since these will function as checkboxes, you can have multiple selected at the same time, which the previous system was actually unable to do. Speaking of the previous version, here it is. The layout is identical, with the main difference being the style and the filters. In this version, the filters were radio buttons, meaning only one could be selected at a time, which is obviously more limiting than using checkboxes. This version also had sorting, but I'm most likely only going to have it sorted alphabetically, which is why I didn't add it into the newest version. Although filtering worked perfectly in the old version, I wanted to remake it to see if I could improve on how I did it, and I'm definitely glad I did. I was able to make it a lot cleaner. It was now time to start working on the most complicated part of this entire thing, creating the filterable quest list items. So what exactly needs to be created here? I needed a way to display every quest in a list, allow the user to select any quest in the list, letting them view the quest info in progress, and allow the user to be able to filter the quests in the list based on the quest's status. In a conventional game engine, this would be trivial because conventional game engines use programming languages, which all have lists built in. In Dreams, it's not only significantly more difficult, but it's also a lot slower. To give a rough example, in a conventional game engine, iterating through a group of objects to perform an action on them, which is what's required to create a filterable quest list, takes a single quote-unquote frame. In Dreams, doing the exact same thing takes 1 frame per object in the list. Anyway, how do you actually make a filterable list in Dreams? The idea is that anytime the list is loaded or filtered, every single item is removed from the list, then re-added to the list one by one until every item that fits into the selected filters is added. Anyway, how do you actually make a filterable list in Dreams? The idea is that anytime the list is loaded or filtered, every single item is removed from the list, then re-added to the list one by one until every item that fits into the selected filters is added. When the list is reset, the quest list items all teleport way off the screen, added to what you can think of as like an item waiting room. One by one, frame by frame, quest list items are pulled from the waiting room and added to the next available spot on the list. This is done using exclusive gates. Each quest list item has an exclusive gate in it. Exclusive gates only allow one signal to pass through at a time, and the exclusive gate with the highest priority is the one that allows the signal through. But how do the exclusive gates fit into the system? Well, whichever quest item's exclusive gate allowed the signal through is the one that is added to the list. Once added to the list, its exclusive gate turns off, so a different item can then be added. The exclusive gate's priorities are changed based on the alphabetical position, and its power is based on if its quest item fits into the selected filters. Once all the exclusive gates are powered off, the process is finished. It is a lot easier said than done, but it went pretty smoothly considering I had already built this exact system before. So without further ado, here it is working, sort of. Check this out, guys. So now we have filters. If we want to show, I don't know, not started or in progress, we can uncheck complete, and now it only shows not started or in progress. If we uncheck both of these, it only shows in progress. If we uncheck everything, it doesn't show anything. And now from this point, we can just show like this. Yeah. We ended day 37 with some visual tweaks, mainly changing the filter checkboxes to look less like checkboxes and more like the tabs up at the top. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it though. I also changed the background from programmer art to slightly nicer looking programmer art. So here's what it looks like at the end of day 37. But we are able to turn these on quite well. We have a bug here though, so let's see if we can fix it. Day 38 started off with bug fixing. Yay. The bug was that when spamming any of the filter buttons, the first item would be doubled up, and I could not for the life of me figure out why. At first, I thought it was because an item was teleporting at the exact frame the reset was occurring. That wasn't it. But fortunately, the actual problem was a little more straightforward. It took 30 minutes, but I finally found the issue, which was caused by me carelessly copying and pasting a switch that was already keyframed. Oh my god. Oh my god. What? Why is this keyframe sorting next? What? This is the resort keyframe. This isn't the sort next keyframe. What the hell? Yes! Let's go! That's what I like to see. Okay. So spamming it now doesn't overlap the quests. Beautiful. After that, I worked on displaying the quest info. Since there are no quests written yet, all I did was display a single line, such as Quest A text. This will be expanded upon in the future. For example, if you're in the middle of a quest, it'll show all the tasks you've already completed, maybe crossed out, and then the current task you are on. This was a tad hard to test since quest selection wasn't implemented yet, but here it is working. But it should work. Okay, let's get something that's not A. There you go, Quest B, Quest C. So it works, but we're unable to scroll. Last but definitely not least, it was time to implement selecting specific quests in the list. I'm sure there are tons of ways to do this, but the easiest way for me was to make the selection always at the top and just scroll the list up and down using the joystick. At first I made it so you could only scroll if the cursor was hovered over the list, but I decided to let you scroll from anywhere. I will have to change this in the future though, since the quest info will also have to be scrolled if the quest is long enough. So how would you choose which thing to scroll? Maybe the quest info was the right joystick and the quest list was left, but I don't really like that. I don't know, I'll figure it out. Scrolling was done by literally just moving the list up or down if the left joystick was held up or down. This alone wasn't enough though, since it either went way too slowly or you had poor control. The solution was to make the default scroll only scroll a single time when you move the joystick, but if you held the joystick in the same direction for a short amount of time, it would start quickly scrolling. To make the items that were outside of the list view area disappear, I used a combination of two techniques. First, I made them invisible if they were outside the area. This is probably the most obvious thing. This alone, though, wasn't enough, since if an item was halfway out of the area, it would still be seen. The second technique was to place a text box where the items were leaving the area that was in front of the main background. The items would go behind this text box, but the player doesn't even know that the text box is there. After a lot of tweaking, here is the final result. I am fully aware this doesn't look visually amazing, but I am extremely happy with how it turned out functionality-wise. I'll definitely do a beauty pass on this before releasing the vertical slice though. This is the first devlog with this me talking about what I did with a time-lapse of me doing it in the background kind of format. Liking and commenting will really help tell me if you guys prefer this compared to what I have been doing, which is more of a stream highlights format. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and have a great rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one.